to my sunroom chat. Today I will tackle this question. Does the mass of a photon in flight become pure energy? Let's begin by summarizing what we know about matter, energy, and photons. Matter has tangible properties that our senses respond to. We can see, touch, smell, hear, our taste matter. The earth and everything we see about us is composed of matter. In contrast, energy is a mathematical concept. Energy is the capacity of a moving object to push or pull another object and therefore do work. When Einstein said the mass of a photon in flight becomes pure energy, the photon became a ghost substance that no one can fathom. The classical concept of energy went out the window. The following is a quote from Feynman. I presented this quote earlier in a sunroom chat. It is worth repeating.
Richard Feynman, a Nobel Prize-winning theoretical physicist, put it this way: "It is important to realize that in physics today, we have no knowledge what energy is. We do not have a picture that energy comes in little blobs of a definite amount."
Of course, he made the first part of this statement because Einstein's ghost substance of pure energy is a complete enigma. In the second part of this statement, he said, we have no picture of energy coming in little blobs of a definite amount. He said this because energy is a mathematical concept. However, Einstein tells us that a photon in flight is a little blob of energy of a definite amount. This little blob of energy cannot be reconciled with the classical concept of energy. In fact, there is no scientific explanation for Einstein's little blob of energy because its properties are identical to the properties of matter. It has remained an enigma for more than 100 years. This in itself is reason enough to cast serious doubt on Einstein's belief that a photon in flight is composed of pure energy. In my previous sunroom chat, I reviewed the properties of photons. Every property is identical to the properties of matter. Photons have weight, and the weight exactly matches the calculated weight using James Clerk Maxwell's equations. And his equations were based on the idea that photons are particles composed of matter. How much more evidence do we need? How can energy have weight? And why is the weight the same as expected for a photon composed of matter? No wonder scientists scratch their heads when it comes to Einstein's blob of pure energy. A photon spins on its axis, and it has spin angular momentum, in the same manner as electrons. But electrons are composed of matter, not energy. No wonder the concept of pure energy is baffling. Photons create electric, magnetic, and gravitational fields, just like electrons and quarks. It makes no sense to believe that force fields are created by both matter and energy. In my book, I examine numerous experiments that show force fields are composed of matter. If force fields are composed of matter, then the objects that create force fields must also be composed of matter. Finally, dozens of conundrums in physics can be solved if photons are composed of matter. This is no small consideration. In fact, it is serious evidence that photons are composed of matter. Shouldn't a photon of pure energy have at least one difference from a photon composed of matter? Well, if we use Einstein's thinking, a blob of energy does have one difference from a blob of matter. Einstein came to this conclusion.
Here we're comparing a blob of energy versus a blob of matter. A photon composed of a blob of energy with weight can travel at the speed of light, but a photon composed of a blob of matter cannot travel at the speed of light because its weight would become infinite. And yet Einstein's blob of energy has the same identical properties as a blob of matter.
Something's wrong, and it's not in Denmark. How was it possible for Einstein to deny the obvious conclusion that photons are composed of matter? There are two reasons. Einstein's special theory of relativity does offer a solution to some experiments that otherwise cannot be explained. However, if all the evidence had not been denied by Einstein, he would have been forced to look for another solution to relativity. The following is a quote from Dr. Richmond Tedlow's book.
Denial is the unconscious calculus that if an unpleasant reality were true, it would be too terrible, so therefore it cannot be true. Einstein realized it would be too terrible if a photon was composed of matter, so therefore it could not be true. The photon had to be composed of something else, otherwise his beautiful theory of relativity was false. And from Dr. Daniel Kahneman, a Nobel Prize-winning psychologist, we find these two facts. We can be blind to the obvious, and we are also blind to our blindness.
Dr. Tedlow cites numerous examples where businesses have failed in some manner because people were blind to the obvious. People who ran the Coca-Cola company denied the obvious when they changed the recipe for Coca-Cola that was loved around the world. And Henry Ford denied the obvious when he refused to paint his cars any color but black, which allowed other manufacturers to steal the market. Ford even fired his son-in-law for suggesting different colors. I will summarize this discussion in the following way.
If the experiments explained by relativity were solved in some other logical manner, there would not be a single reason to believe that a photon in flight is composed of a blob of pure energy.
This would be a blessing for two reasons.
1. No scientist can explain what pure energy is. It is a blob of something that we cannot fathom. It has no scientific explanation. And 2. A photon composed of matter explains all the experiments and all the observations involving photons.
Isn't it time to search for another theory that explains relativity? I believe I have found it. I encourage you to read my book.